The email arrived at 2:47 a.m., and Zara Simpson stared at her laptop screen in disbelief, reading the same 3 lines over and over until the words blurred together, and her heart hammered so hard she could feel it in her throat. She had been fired. Not laid off. Fired. After 6 years of dedicated service as a senior textile designer at Morrison & Cole, she had been terminated via email in the middle of the night. The reason given was vague corporate restructuring nonsense that made her stomach turn. Zara closed her laptop with trembling hands and sat in the darkness of her Brooklyn apartment, wondering how she would pay next month's rent. 3 weeks later, she found herself standing outside a boutique fashion house in Manhattan's garment district, clutching a portfolio that suddenly felt inadequate. The building was sleek and modern, all glass and steel, with the name Laurent Designs etched elegantly across the entrance. She had sent her resume on a whim after seeing the job posting for a textile designer, never expecting a callback. But here she was, dressed in her best interview outfit, trying to project confidence she did not feel. The receptionist led her through a maze of corridors filled with fabric samples and sketches pinned to massive boards. The creative energy was palpable, and Zara felt a spark of excitement cut through her anxiety. This was exactly the kind of environment she had dreamed of working in. "Miss Simpson, Mr. Laurent will see you now." Zara walked into the office and immediately forgot every prepared answer she had rehearsed. The man rising from behind the desk was not what she expected. He was younger, probably early 30s, with dark hair that fell just slightly over his forehead and sharp green eyes that seemed to see right through her nervous exterior. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that screamed expensive, and when he extended his hand, his smile was warm and genuine. "Sebastian Laurent," he said, his voice deep and steady. "Thank you for coming in, Miss Simpson." "Zara, please," she managed, shaking his hand and trying not to notice how his grip was firm and confident. "Thank you for the opportunity." They sat, and Sebastian gestured to her portfolio. "I have to admit, your work caught my attention immediately. The textile patterns you designed for Morrison & Cole were some of the most innovative I have seen in years. That geometric silk collection you did last spring was exceptional." Zara felt heat rise to her cheeks. "You know my work." "I make it my business to know talent when I see it," Sebastian said simply. "Tell me why you left Morrison & Cole." The question hung in the air, and Zara considered lying, spinning some tale about seeking new challenges. But something in Sebastian's direct gaze made her want to be honest. "I was fired," she said quietly. "Corporate restructuring, they called it. I think the new management wanted to bring in their own people." Sebastian leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Their loss. I looked at your entire portfolio, Zara. You have a rare gift for combining traditional techniques with modern aesthetics. That is exactly what Laurent Designs needs right now." "Needs," Zara echoed, hope fluttering in her chest. "I am launching a new luxury line next spring. High-end, exclusive pieces for a very particular clientele. I need someone who can create textiles that tell a story, that feel both timeless and contemporary." He paused, his green eyes intense. "I think you might be that person." They talked for over an hour. Sebastian asked thoughtful questions about her design process, her inspirations, her vision for the future of textile design. Zara found herself relaxing, animated as she described her ideas and techniques. Sebastian listened intently, occasionally asking a question that showed he truly understood the intricacies of the craft. "I want to offer you the position," Sebastian said finally. "Senior textile designer, working directly with me on the new collection. The salary is competitive, and you would have access to resources Morrison & Cole could never provide." The number he quoted made Zara's eyes widen. It was nearly double what she had been making. "I accept," she said without hesitation, then laughed nervously. "I mean, yes, absolutely, I would love to work here." Sebastian's smile was radiant. "Excellent. Can you start Monday?" Zara floated out of the building on a cloud of disbelief and joy. She had a job. A real job at a prestigious design house, working with someone who clearly respected her abilities. And if Sebastian Laurent happened to be devastatingly handsome, well, that was just a pleasant bonus she would keep strictly professional. Her first week at Laurent Designs was a whirlwind. The studio was everything she had hoped for, with cutting-edge equipment and a team of talented designers who welcomed her warmly. But it was Sebastian who captivated her attention. He was hands-on in a way her previous bosses had never been, spending hours in the studio working alongside his team. He had an eye for detail that matched her own, and their creative collaboration felt natural and effortless. "What do you think of this weight?" Sebastian asked one afternoon, handing her a sample of silk he had been considering for the collection's signature piece. Zara ran the fabric through her fingers, feeling its drape and texture. "It is beautiful, but too delicate for the embroidery pattern you want. We need something with more body that can support the detail work without puckering." Sebastian nodded thoughtfully. "Show me what you have in mind." They spent the next 3 hours in the textile library, examining samples and debating the merits of different weaves. Zara was acutely aware of how close Sebastian stood as they worked, how his cologne was subtle and expensive, how his laugh was deep and genuine when she made a dry joke about thread counts. She reminded herself firmly that this was professional, that she could not afford to develop a crush on her boss. But as the weeks passed, it became increasingly difficult to maintain that distance. Sebastian had a way of making everyone in the studio feel valued, remembering birthdays and asking about family members by name. He worked harder than anyone else, often staying late into the evening perfecting designs. And sometimes, when Zara was the only other person still in the studio, they would talk about things beyond work. "Why fashion?" Zara asked one evening as they sat surrounded by fabric swatches, take-out containers from the Chinese place down the street scattered between them. Sebastian was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "I grew up surrounded by beautiful things, art, architecture, craftsmanship, but fashion felt different. It is beauty that people wear that becomes part of their identity. There is something powerful about that." "You make it sound almost philosophical," Zara said with a smile. "Maybe it is," Sebastian replied, his green eyes meeting hers. "What about you?" "Why textiles?" "My grandmother was a weaver," Zara said. "She taught me when I was little. I loved how patterns could tell stories, how different threads came together to create something stronger than any single strand. It felt like magic." "It is magic," Sebastian said softly. "What you do with patterns and color, the way you can make fabric feel alive, that is absolutely magic." The way he looked at her when he said it made Zara's breath catch. She looked away quickly, busying herself with gathering the empty containers. This was dangerous territory, these late nights and intimate conversations. Sebastian was her boss, and more than that, he existed in a completely different world than she did. The man clearly had money, real money, based on the penthouse address she had seen on some documents, and the way he casually mentioned flying to Paris to meet with fabric suppliers. But Sebastian seemed oblivious to the barriers Zara saw so clearly. He continued to seek out her opinion, to light up when she entered a room, to find excuses to work closely with her. The rest of the team noticed, of course. Zara caught the knowing glances between other designers, the way conversations would pause when she and Sebastian walked through together. He never worked this closely with the previous senior designer, her colleague Marcus mentioned one day, his tone carefully neutral. "You two have a good creative chemistry." "We work well together," Zara said firmly, ignoring the flutter in her chest. The breakthrough for the collection came on a rainy October evening. Zara had been struggling with the central piece, a gown that was meant to be the cornerstone of the entire line. Nothing felt right. Every pattern she created was technically perfect but emotionally flat. She was alone in the studio, having stayed late yet again, when Sebastian appeared in the doorway. "I saw the lights on," he said. "I thought you might still be here." "Cannot get this pattern right," Zara admitted, frustration evident in her voice. "It needs to feel regal but modern, strong but delicate. Everything I create is too much one or the other." Sebastian crossed to her workstation and studied the sketches scattered across her desk. "May I?" He picked up one of her earlier attempts, holding it up to the light. "This one." "The foundation is here. You just abandoned it too quickly." "That one felt too formal," Zara protested. "Look again," Sebastian said, moving to stand beside her. He laid the sketch between them, his shoulder brushing hers. "See how the geometric elements here create structure. Now imagine softening just the connecting lines, adding organic curves that transition between the angles, strength and delicacy together." Zara stared at the sketch with fresh eyes, and suddenly she could see it. "We could use a gradient dye technique, darker at the structured points and lighter where the curves flow." "Exactly," Sebastian said, excitement coloring his voice. "And if we use that silk linen blend you suggested last week, it would have the body for the geometric sections and enough drape for the curves." They worked together for the next 4 hours, completely absorbed in bringing the vision to life. Zara sketched while Sebastian gathered fabric samples, both of them talking over each other in their enthusiasm, ideas building on ideas until they had something truly spectacular. "This is it," Zara breathed, staring at the final sketch. "This is the piece." "You did it," Sebastian said, but when Zara looked up at him, his gaze was not on the sketch. He was looking at her with an intensity that made her heart race. "We did it," she corrected softly. The moment stretched between them, charged with something unnamed. Sebastian lifted his hand, and for one breathless second, Zara thought he might touch her face. But then his phone buzzed, shattering the spell. Sebastian glanced at the screen and his expression shifted, becoming shuttered. "I should go," he said abruptly. "Excellent work tonight, Zara." He was gone before she could respond, leaving her standing alone in the studio, confused and aching with something she could not quite name. After that night, Sebastian seemed to pull back. He was still professional, still collaborative, but the easy warmth between them cooled to something more distant. Zara told herself it was for the best, that she had been reading too much into their interactions anyway. But she missed him, missed the way they could talk for hours, missed the way his face lit up when she showed him a new design. November arrived with bitter cold, and the collection was moving into production. Zara should have been thrilled, but instead she felt hollow. She threw herself into work, supervising the creation of each textile piece with meticulous attention to detail. "You are here late again," a voice said, and Zara turned to find Sebastian standing in the doorway of the production room. It was past 9 in the evening, and she had not realized she was the only one left in the building. "Wanted to make sure the dye gradient on the signature piece was exactly right," Zara said, gesturing to the length of fabric stretched across the work table. The first attempt was too abrupt in the color transition. Sebastian walked over and examined the fabric carefully. "It is perfect," he said quietly. You are brilliant at what you do, Zara. Thank you, she said, suddenly very aware that they were alone in the dimly lit room. I owe you an apology, Sebastian said, not looking at her. I have been distant lately. That was unprofessional of me. You do not owe me anything, Zara said, though her heart was pounding. You are the boss. You can conduct yourself however you see fit. That is not what I mean. Sebastian finally met her eyes, and the raw vulnerability in his expression made her breath catch. I have been distant because being around you has become difficult. You make me want things I have no right to want. Zara's mouth went dry. Sebastian, I know this is inappropriate, he continued, the words coming faster now. You work for me, and I should maintain professional boundaries. But I cannot stop thinking about you. The way your face lights up when you figure out a design problem. The way you chew your lip when you are concentrating. The way you laugh at my terrible jokes. I am halfway in love with you, Zara, and I have no idea what to do about it. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. You are in love with me, falling, Sebastian corrected. Rapidly and without any semblance of grace. Zara should have been careful. She should have considered the implications, the power dynamics, all the reasons this was complicated. But in that moment, standing in the quiet production room with Sebastian looking at her like she was something precious, none of that seemed to matter. I think I am falling too, she whispered. Sebastian closed the distance between them in 3 strides, and then his hands were framing her face, and he was kissing her with a desperate tenderness that made her knees weak. Zara melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, kissing him back with all the pent-up longing of the past months. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sebastian rested his forehead against hers. This is going to complicate things, he murmured. Probably, Zara agreed, unable to stop smiling. I do not want you to feel pressured. Your job is yours regardless of what happens between us personally. I need you to know that. I know, Zara said, and she did. Whatever else Sebastian was, she trusted him completely. We will figure it out. They did figure it out, carefully and deliberately. Sebastian insisted on transparency with the rest of the team, and they disclosed their relationship to HR. There were some raised eyebrows and a few knowing smiles, but the studio culture was relaxed enough that it did not create the drama Zara had feared. Dating Sebastian was unlike anything Zara had experienced. He was thoughtful and attentive, planning dates that ranged from cozy dinners at hidden gem restaurants to evenings at the theater. But Zara's favorite times were the quiet moments, when they would cook together in Sebastian's penthouse kitchen, or spend Sunday mornings reading the newspaper side by side. The penthouse itself was stunning, a sprawling space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. The decor was elegant but comfortable, filled with art and books that spoke to Sebastian's wide-ranging interests. But Zara noticed things that seemed at odds with his designer-entrepreneur persona. The art on the walls was not just expensive. Several pieces were museum quality, works she recognized from auction catalogs. There was a locked cabinet in his study that he never opened, and sometimes his phone would ring with a particular ringtone that made his expression tighten. "Is everything all right?" Zara asked one evening when he had excused himself to take one of those calls, returning 20 minutes later looking tense. "Family business," Sebastian said shortly, then softened. "I am sorry. It is complicated." "You do not talk about your family much," Zara observed gently. "We are not particularly close," Sebastian said, which was clearly an understatement. "They have expectations I have never been very good at meeting." Zara wanted to press, sensing there was more to the story, but Sebastian's closed expression warned her off. Everyone had family complications. She certainly had her own. Her parents had divorced when she was young, and her relationship with her father was strained at best. She understood not wanting to dwell on difficult family dynamics. But as the weeks passed and the winter holidays approached, the mystery of Sebastian's background began to nag at her. He casually mentioned having grown up in Europe, but was vague about where specifically. He spoke French, Italian, and what sounded like German with native fluency. He had a way of carrying himself, a certain bearing that spoke of old money and elite education. And while Zara knew Laurent Designs was successful, some things did not quite add up. The building they worked in, which Sebastian owned outright, the private car service he used, the fact that he had paid for the entire new collection out of pocket, a sum that had to be in the millions. Have you ever Googled him? Her friend and former colleague Mia asked one evening when they met for drinks. That feels like violating his privacy, Zara protested, though the thought had occurred to her more than once. Zara, you are in love with the man. Do you not want to know who he actually is? I know who he is, Zara said firmly. He is kind and brilliant and he makes me laugh. That is what matters. But doubt had been planted. That night, alone in her apartment, Zara opened her laptop and typed Sebastian's name into the search bar. The results that came back were mostly related to Laurent Designs and the fashion industry. There were a few photos from charity galas, always looking impossibly handsome in a tuxedo, but nothing that explained the mysterious phone calls or the sense that Sebastian was holding something back. She was about to close the laptop when she noticed something odd. One of the photos was tagged with a caption that mentioned His Highness attending a fashion industry event. Zara clicked on the image, her heart beginning to pound. It was Sebastian, but he was standing with a group of people she did not recognize, and everyone around him seemed to be treating him with unusual deference. Zara went down a rabbit hole. She searched variations of Sebastian's name combined with royal titles, and then she found it. A society blog from 3 years ago, discussing how Prince Sebastian Laurent of the small European principality of Aldoria had shocked his family by relocating to New York to pursue fashion design rather than taking up his expected royal duties. Zara stared at her screen, the words swimming before her eyes. Prince. Sebastian was not just wealthy, he was actual royalty. A prince from a country she vaguely remembered learning about in school, one of those tiny but incredibly wealthy European nations nestled between France and Switzerland. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sebastian. Missing you. Dinner tomorrow. Zara stared at the message, her mind reeling. Why had he not told her? They had been together for nearly 2 months, had shared their hopes and dreams and fears. But he had never mentioned this rather significant detail about his identity. She typed and deleted several responses before settling on a simple yes, your place or mine, mine. I will cook. Zara set her phone down and tried to process what she had learned. Sebastian was a prince. The man she had fallen in love with, who stayed late at the studio perfecting seams and debating thread counts, was literal royalty. The revelation should have felt enormous, but instead, it felt oddly inevitable. It explained so much: his refinement, his resources, his mysterious family calls, the weight he sometimes seemed to carry. But it also raised uncomfortable questions. Why had he hidden this from her? Did he think she could not handle it? Did he not trust her enough to share this fundamental part of his identity? The next evening, Zara arrived at Sebastian's penthouse with her stomach in knots. She had rehearsed what she wanted to say a dozen times, but every version felt wrong. Sebastian greeted her with a warm kiss, and she could smell something delicious cooking in the kitchen. I am attempting coq au vin, he said, leading her inside. Fair warning, my cooking is hit or miss. Sebastian, Zara said, her voice coming out more serious than she intended. "We need to talk." His expression immediately shifted to concern. "What is wrong? Why did you not tell me you are a prince?" The words hung in the air between them. Sebastian went very still, his face draining of color. "You know," he said flatly, "I found out by accident, an old photo online." Zara crossed her arms, hurt and confusion warring in her chest. "Were you ever going to tell me?" Sebastian ran a hand through his hair, looking more rattled than she had ever seen him. "Yes, I was. I just did not know how." "You could have started with 'Hello, I am royalty,'" Zara said, aiming for lightness but landing somewhere closer to bitter. "Please sit," Sebastian said, gesturing to the living room. "Let me explain." They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the physical distance reflecting the sudden emotional gap between them. Sebastian leaned forward, elbows on his knees, choosing his words carefully. "I am the youngest son of Prince Henry of Aldoria," he began. "I have 2 older brothers who will inherit the throne and handle the actual governance. I was essentially the spare to the spare, expected to attend functions and smile for cameras and marry someone appropriate to cement political alliances." "That sounds difficult," Zara said quietly. "It was suffocating," Sebastian said. "I grew up in a gilded cage surrounded by protocol and expectations. Everything I did was scrutinized, judged, compared to my brothers. I was not allowed to just be myself. And then I discovered fashion design, and for the first time, I found something that was mine. Something where I could create and express myself without worrying about tradition or duty." "So you left," Zara said, beginning to understand. "I left," Sebastian confirmed. "It caused an enormous scandal. My father was furious. We barely speak now. I still have certain obligations, appearances I have to make, but I built Laurent Designs entirely on my own terms. No family money, no royal connections, just my work and my vision." "But you are still a prince," Zara pointed out. "Technically, yes. I still carry the title, attend the occasional state function when absolutely required. But in my daily life I am just Sebastian Laurent, designer. That is who I want to be." He finally looked directly at her, his green eyes pleading. "I did not tell you because I wanted you to know me as that person, as the man who works beside you in the studio, not the prince with all the baggage that comes with it." Zara absorbed this, her anger fading into something more complex. "I understand why you did it," she said slowly. "But Sebastian, we are together now. You should have trusted me with this." "You are right," Sebastian said immediately. "I should have. I was afraid of how you might react, how it might change things between us. I have had relationships before where the title was all they cared about, the novelty of dating royalty. I did not want that with you. What we have is real, and I did not want my background to taint it." "What we have is real," Zara agreed, "but relationships are built on honesty. You keeping this secret makes me wonder what else you have not told me." "Nothing," Sebastian said, moving closer. "Zara, there is nothing else. I have laid bare everything I am. The business, my family situation, my feelings for you. You know me better than almost anyone." Zara wanted to believe him. Looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, she thought she did. But trust, once shaken, was not instantly restored. "I need some time to process this," she said finally. Sebastian's face fell, but he nodded. "Of course. Take whatever time you need." Zara left without staying for dinner and spent the next few days trying to sort through her feelings. She talked it through with Mia, who had very strong opinions about Sebastian's deception. She worked through it in her sketchbook, finding clarity in the familiar motion of pencil on paper. And slowly, she began to understand her own reaction. She was not upset that Sebastian was a prince. That part was almost absurdly romantic, something out of a fairy tale. What hurt was that he had not trusted her enough to share it. They had been building something real, something precious, and he had been holding back a fundamental piece of himself. But she also understood why he had done it. In his position, with his experiences, she might have done the same. The question was whether she could move forward, whether they could build something stronger on a foundation of complete honesty. She was working late at the studio, alone with her thoughts, when Sebastian appeared. She had not seen him outside of necessary work interactions for 3 days, and her heart clenched at the sight of him. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes that suggested he had been sleeping as poorly as she had. "I am sorry," he said without preamble. "I am sorry I was not honest with you from the start. You deserved better than that." "You hurt me," Zara said simply. "I know." Sebastian stepped closer but kept a respectful distance. "I have been thinking about what you said about trust. You were right. I was protecting myself instead of being open with you, and that was wrong. If you give me another chance, I promise complete honesty about everything." "Everything?" Zara asked. "Everything," Sebastian confirmed. "My family, my obligations, what being with me might mean for your life." "Because, Zara, I am in love with you, not falling anymore. Completely, absolutely in love. And I want a future with you, but only if you want that too, knowing all of who I am." Zara felt her remaining resistance crumble. "I am in love with you too," she admitted. "Prince or not, you are still the man who makes me laugh, who understands my work, who stays up until 3 a.m. perfecting a single seam because it matters. That is who I fell in love with." Sebastian closed the distance between them and pulled her into his arms. "Thank you," he murmured into her hair. "Thank you for understanding." They stood like that for a long moment, simply holding each other. When they finally pulled apart, Zara looked up at him seriously. "But no more secrets," she said. "If we are doing this, we do it honestly." "No more secrets," Sebastian promised, and kissed her to seal it. True to his word, Sebastian began opening up about his life in ways he never had before. He showed Zara photos from his childhood, explained the intricacies of Aldorian royal protocol, and even introduced her to his assistant Marcus, who turned out to be not just an employee but a representative from the royal household, who helped manage Sebastian's remaining princely obligations. "There is a state dinner in 2 weeks," Sebastian mentioned one evening as they shared Thai food on his couch. "In Aldoria, I am required to attend. Would you come with me?" Zara nearly choked on her pad Thai. "To Aldoria, to meet your family, you do not have to," Sebastian said quickly. "I know it is a lot, but I would love to have you there, and my family should meet the woman I love." "Will they be okay with me?" Zara asked nervously. "I mean, I am not exactly royal material." "You are extraordinary," Sebastian said firmly. "And if my family cannot see that, it is their loss. But I think they will love you, my mother especially. She has been asking about you. You told your mother about me." "I tell her about everything that matters," Sebastian said simply. The flight to Aldoria was surreal. They traveled on a private jet, which Sebastian explained was a necessity given his status. Zara spent most of the flight trying not to panic about what she had gotten herself into. She was about to meet actual royalty, attend a state dinner, navigate a world completely foreign to her own. Sebastian sensed her anxiety and took her hand. "Breathe," he said gently. "You are going to be amazing." Aldoria was breathtaking, a small country of alpine mountains and medieval villages. The royal palace sat on a hillside overlooking the capital city, a stunning structure of white stone and soaring towers that looked like something from a storybook. "Welcome home, Your Highness," the staff said as they entered, bowing formally to Sebastian. He accepted the deference with practiced ease, but Zara could see the tension in his shoulders. "My quarters are in the East Wing," Sebastian said, leading her through corridors lined with portraits and tapestries. "You will have an adjoining suite." The suite was larger than Zara's entire apartment, furnished with antiques and featuring a four-poster bed that looked like it belonged in a museum. A wardrobe full of formal gowns had been provided, each one clearly custom-made to her measurements. "How did they know my size?" Zara asked, running her hands over the sumptuous fabrics. "I may have provided some information," Sebastian admitted. "I wanted you to feel comfortable." That evening, Sebastian took her to meet his mother, Princess Elise. Zara had expected someone intimidating and formal, but the woman who greeted them in her private sitting room was warm and elegant, with Sebastian's same green eyes and ready smile. "So you are the one who has captured my son's heart," Elise said, taking both of Zara's hands in hers. "He speaks of you constantly in our calls." "Your Highness," Zara said, attempting a curtsy that felt hopelessly awkward. "Please, Elise is fine when we are private," the princess said kindly. "Come, sit. Tell me about your work. Sebastian says you are a brilliant textile designer." They talked for over an hour, and Zara found herself genuinely liking Sebastian's mother. Elise was sharp and cultured, but also kind and genuinely interested in Zara's life and work. She shared stories about Sebastian as a boy, how he had always been creative and stubborn about following his own path. "His father did not understand," Elise said with a touch of sadness. "Henry wanted Sebastian to be a soldier or diplomat, something he deemed appropriate." The fashion design was seen as frivolous. "It is not frivolous," Zara said firmly. "Sebastian is creating beauty and art. That matters." "I agree completely," Elise said, her expression approving. "I am glad he found someone who understands that." The state dinner the following evening was an exercise in controlled terror. Zara wore a deep blue gown from the provided wardrobe, and Sebastian looked devastatingly handsome in full formal attire, with medals and decorations she did not understand. They entered the grand ballroom together, and Zara felt hundreds of eyes turn their way. "Just stay with me," Sebastian murmured. "You are doing wonderfully." The dinner itself was interminable, course after course served with elaborate ceremony. Zara was seated near Sebastian but not beside him, surrounded by nobles and dignitaries, who seemed curious about the American designer who had captured the youngest prince's heart. She fielded questions politely, hyper-aware of every piece of silverware she used and every word she spoke. Sebastian's father, Prince Henry, was a stern man who barely acknowledged Zara's presence. His older brothers were polite but distant, clearly more interested in matters of state than their youngest brother's romantic life. But Zara caught Sebastian's mother watching them throughout the evening, a small smile on her face. After the dinner, there was dancing. Sebastian found Zara immediately, sweeping her onto the floor with a grace that reminded her he had been trained for this his entire life. "You were magnificent," he said as they waltzed. "Everyone is talking about how poised and elegant you are." "I was terrified," Zara admitted. "You did not show it." Sebastian pulled her closer, uncaring who might see. "Thank you for being here. Having you by my side made this bearable." "Do you have to do this often?" Zara asked. "A few times a year," Sebastian said. "Major state functions, family events, but I spend the rest of my time being exactly who I want to be." They stayed in Oldoria for 3 more days, and Zara began to understand the complexity of Sebastian's life. He was charming and gracious at official functions, playing his role perfectly. But in private, she saw the tension it caused him, the way he seemed to deflate once they were alone. This was why he had built his life in New York, why Laurent Designs meant so much to him. It was his escape, his authentic self. On their last evening, they walked through the palace gardens, the alpine air crisp and cold around them. "I want you to understand what being with me means," Sebastian said seriously. "There will be more events like this. Press attention when our relationship becomes public knowledge, scrutiny and expectations. I need to know if you can handle that." Zara had been thinking about this throughout the visit. "I am not going to pretend it is not intimidating," she said honestly. "But Sebastian, loving you is worth it. The public stuff, the royal obligations, we will figure it out together. Because at the end of the day, you are still just the man I love. The title is part of you, but it is not all of you." Sebastian stopped walking and cupped her face in his hands. "I love you so much," he said fiercely. "More than I knew it was possible to love someone." "I love you too," Zara whispered, and kissed him under the stars. They returned to New York with a new understanding between them. Their relationship deepened, growing stronger now that there were no secrets between them. Sebastian was more relaxed, more openly affectionate. And Zara found that knowing about his royal background actually made her love him more. Understanding the pressures he had escaped, the courage it took to forge his own path, made her appreciate him in new ways. The collection launched in February to spectacular reviews. The textile work was hailed as innovative and stunning, and Laurent Designs solidified its reputation as one of the most exciting fashion houses in the industry. At the launch party, Sebastian made a point of crediting Zara publicly for her contributions, praising her talent and vision. The fashion press took notice, and suddenly, Zara found herself fielding interview requests and job offers from major houses. "You could leave," Sebastian said one evening after Zara mentioned a particularly lucrative offer from a competitor. "If you want to establish your own reputation separate from me and Laurent Designs, I would understand." Zara looked at him in surprise. "Do you want me to leave?" "God, no," Sebastian said immediately. "But I do not want you to feel like you have to stay because of our relationship. Your career should be your own choice." "I am staying because Laurent Designs is where I want to be," Zara said firmly. "We make incredible work together, Sebastian. I am not giving that up." Spring arrived, bringing warmer weather and new beginnings. Zara moved out of her cramped Brooklyn apartment and into Sebastian's penthouse, a step that felt both terrifying and inevitable. They fell into an easy domestic rhythm, cooking together and working on designs at the kitchen table, and simply existing in each other's space with comfortable affection. The press eventually discovered their relationship, as Sebastian had warned they would. There were headlines about the prince and the designer, speculation about whether this was serious, invasive articles that dug into Zara's background and analyzed her every public appearance. It was overwhelming at first, but Sebastian helped her navigate it, and eventually, the initial frenzy died down to a more manageable level of attention. "You handle this better than I expected," Sebastian's brother Christian commented when he visited New York on diplomatic business. He was the middle brother, more relaxed than their father but still very much the responsible royal heir. "I just try not to read the comments," Zara said wryly. Christian laughed. "Smart woman, Sebastian is lucky to have you." In May, they traveled to Paris for Fashion Week, where Laurent Designs showed a capsule collection that featured Zara's textile work prominently. The show was a triumph, with buyers and press raving about the innovative designs. At the after-party, Sebastian pulled Zara onto the balcony of their hotel suite, away from the celebration. "I have something for you," he said, his voice nervous in a way she rarely heard. "Sebastian, you already gave me that beautiful bracelet," Zara protested. "This is different." Sebastian took both her hands, his expression serious and tender. "Zara, this year with you has been the happiest of my life. You make me laugh, you inspire me creatively, you understand both sides of who I am. You are my best friend and my great love. I cannot imagine my future without you in it." He dropped to one knee and Zara's heart stopped. "Will you marry me?" Sebastian asked, producing a ring box from his pocket. The ring inside was stunning, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds that glittered in the Parisian moonlight. "Yes," Zara gasped, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." Sebastian slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that made her dizzy with joy. Behind them, the party guests who had followed them onto the balcony erupted in applause and cheers. The engagement made international headlines. There was a formal announcement from the Aldorian royal family. Photos from the Paris proposal that somehow found their way into every major publication. Endless speculation about when and where the wedding would be. It was overwhelming, but Zara and Sebastian weathered it together, finding humor in the most ridiculous articles and supporting each other through the invasive attention. "We can have a small wedding if you prefer," Sebastian offered. "It does not have to be a royal spectacle." But Zara had been thinking about this. "Your family will want something formal. The people of Aldoria will want to celebrate, and honestly, I think I do too. I want to marry you in front of everyone to show the world how much I love you." They settled on a compromise. A ceremony in Aldoria that would satisfy the royal protocols, followed by an intimate reception for close friends and family. Planning was chaotic, with input from the royal household and Sebastian's mother, who threw herself into the preparations with enthusiasm. "She is happier than I have seen her in years," Sebastian confided. "She loves you almost as much as I do." The summer passed in a blur of wedding preparations and work on the new collection. Laurent Designs was expanding, opening a second location and hiring more staff. Zara took on more responsibilities, essentially becoming Sebastian's creative partner in running the business. They worked beautifully together, their different strengths complementing each other perfectly. The wedding took place in September, exactly 1 year after Zara had started working at Laurent Designs. The ceremony was held in the historic cathedral in Aldoria's capital, with hundreds of guests including royalty from across Europe, celebrities from the fashion world, and everyone who mattered in both Sebastian and Zara's lives. Zara wore a gown she had designed herself, featuring textiles she had created specifically for the occasion. The pattern told a story, beginning with geometric angles at the hem that gradually softened into flowing organic curves as they moved up the dress, representing the journey of her and Sebastian's relationship from professional to personal, from separate to united. When she walked down the aisle on her mother's arm, Zara saw only Sebastian. He stood at the altar in full formal regalia, medals and decorations gleaming, but his eyes were only for her. Tears streamed down his face unashamedly as she approached. "You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen," he whispered when she reached him. The ceremony was traditional and elegant, conducted in both English and French. When they exchanged vows, Zara's voice was steady and sure. "I promise to love you in all your complexity, prince and designer, royal and rebel. I promise to be your partner in creating beauty and building a life together. I promise to trust you and be honest with you, to laugh with you and support you through whatever comes. You are my home, Sebastian, and I choose you today and always." Sebastian's vows were equally heartfelt, his deep voice filled with emotion. "You saw me when I was just a man in a studio, not a title or an obligation. You loved me for who I am, not what I represent. You inspire me every day with your talent and your strength and your generous heart. I promise to honor you, to protect what we have built together, to be the man worthy of your love. You are my everything, Zara, my present and my future. When they were pronounced husband and wife, the kiss they shared was tender and deep, sealing promises that went beyond tradition and duty into something purely, gloriously their own. The reception was held in the palace gardens, transformed into a fairy tale setting with thousands of flowers and twinkling lights. They danced their first dance as husband and wife to a string quartet, and Zara felt like she was floating. "How are you feeling, princess?" Sebastian murmured as they swayed together. Zara laughed. The title still felt surreal. "Perfectly happy." "Good," Sebastian said, pulling her closer, "because this is just the beginning." Their honeymoon was spent partly in Bali and partly back in New York. Sebastian joking that they needed to check on the studio, even though they both knew their team had everything under control. Being married felt both momentous and natural, as if they had been moving toward this from the moment Zara walked into that interview a year ago. They settled into married life with surprising ease. The press attention faded to more manageable levels as newer stories captured public imagination. Zara kept her name professionally, remaining Zara Simpson at work while technically being Princess Zara Laurent in formal settings. It was a balance that felt right, honoring both her identity and her new role. The following spring, they launched their most ambitious collection yet, a collaboration that fully showcased their combined vision. The line was about transformation and synthesis, featuring Zara's innovative textiles and silhouettes that Sebastian had designed to honor both tradition and modernity. Critics called it their masterpiece. At the show's after-party, Zara felt a wave of nausea and excused herself. Sebastian found her in the bathroom 10 minutes later, looking pale. "Are you all right?" he asked, immediately concerned. "I think so," Zara said. "Maybe just too much champagne and excitement." But the nausea persisted over the next few days, and Zara had a suspicion that grew until she finally bought a test. When the positive result appeared, she sat on the bathroom floor of their penthouse, equal parts terrified and thrilled. She told Sebastian that evening, simply handing him the test without preamble. He stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at her with wonder written across his face. "We are having a baby." "We are having a baby," Zara confirmed, and then she was in his arms, both of them laughing and crying at once. The pregnancy was textbook healthy, though Zara dealt with persistent morning sickness in the first trimester. Sebastian was attentive to the point of being overprotective, insisting she cut back on hours at the studio and rest more. They announced the pregnancy at the end of the first trimester, and the response was overwhelming. Congratulations poured in from around the world, and Aldoria erupted in celebration at the news of a new royal baby. "The press is calling our baby the fairy tale prince or princess," Zara said, reading the headlines on her tablet as she rested on the couch, her hand on her growing belly. "They are not wrong," Sebastian said, kissing her stomach gently. "This is a fairy tale, you and me and this little one." They learned they were having a girl in the summer, and Sebastian cried happy tears for a solid 5 minutes. They debated names endlessly, wanting something that honored Aldorian tradition while also feeling personal and meaningful. "What about Amelia?" Sebastian suggested one evening. "It was my grandmother's name. She was the only one who supported my decision to pursue fashion." "Emilia Simpson Laurent," Zara said, testing it out. "I love it." Their daughter arrived in early November after 12 hours of labor during which Sebastian held Zara's hand and coached her breathing and looked absolutely terrified the entire time. When the doctor placed the tiny, perfect baby in Zara's arms, the world narrowed to just the three of them. "Hello, Emilia," Zara whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We have been waiting for you." Sebastian looked at his wife and daughter with such profound love that Zara felt her heart might burst. "She is perfect," he said hoarsely. "You are both perfect." Emilia was a good baby, alert and curious, with Sebastian's green eyes and Zara's dark curls. They brought her home to the penthouse, which they had converted partially into a nursery, and settled into the chaotic reality of new parenthood. Sebastian was hands-on in a way that surprised people who only knew him as a royal prince, changing diapers and doing midnight feedings and walking endless circles around the living room when Emilia was fussy. "You are an amazing father," Zara said one night, watching him rock their daughter to sleep with infinite patience. "I want to be present for her in ways my own father never was for me," Sebastian said quietly. "I want her to grow up knowing she is loved and supported no matter what path she chooses." Princess Elise visited from Aldoria when Emilia was 2 months old, and the joy on her face when she held her granddaughter was beautiful to see. "She has your spirit," Elise told Zara. "I can see it already. Strong and determined, she will make her own path in the world." They took Emilia to Aldoria for her first Christmas, and the tiny princess charmed everyone at the palace. Even Prince Henry, stern and formal as ever, seemed to soften when Emilia grabbed his finger with her small hand. The official photos taken during that visit, showing the royal family with its newest member, were distributed worldwide and broke records for most liked royal portraits online. As Emilia grew, so did Laurent Designs. They opened additional locations, expanded into accessories, and became one of the most respected names in high-end fashion. But Sebastian and Zara made sure to maintain balance, prioritizing family time over endless work hours. They took turns staying home with Emilia when needed, brought her to the studio in a baby carrier when they had to both work, and built a life that integrated all the pieces of who they were. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they returned to Paris, to the same hotel where Sebastian had proposed. Elise had agreed to watch Emilia for the weekend, giving them rare time alone together. 5 years, Zara marveled as they stood on the same balcony where Sebastian had knelt. "It feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time." "Best 5 years of my life," Sebastian said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Though I will admit, when I first interviewed you, I did not anticipate all this." "You mean falling in love with your employee and becoming a father and building an empire together," Zara teased. "Exactly that," Sebastian agreed, laughing. "You have made my life bigger and better than I ever imagined it could be." Zara turned in his arms to face him. "You gave me everything I did not know I needed. Love, partnership, purpose. You saw who I could be and helped me become her." "We helped each other," Sebastian corrected. "That is what the best partnerships do." They renewed their vows privately on that trip, just the two of them, and an efficient, reaffirming promises that had only grown stronger with time. And when they returned home to their daughter and their work and their beautiful, complicated, perfect life, Zara felt nothing but gratitude. Years passed in a happy blur. Emilia grew into a bright, creative child who showed signs of inheriting both parents' artistic talents. She loved visiting the studio, playing with fabric scraps and drawing designs with fierce concentration. Laurent Designs continued to thrive, with Zara eventually stepping into a full creative director role alongside Sebastian. They became known as one of fashion's power couples, but more importantly, they remained partners in every sense of the word. They added to their family when Emilia was 4, welcoming twin boys named Julian and Alexander. The penthouse became delightfully chaotic, filled with toys and laughter and the happy noise of growing children. Sebastian proved to be just as devoted a father to his sons as he was to his daughter, patient and playful and present. Sometimes I cannot believe this is my life, Zara said one Sunday morning as they sat in their living room, surrounded by children and half-built block towers and the remnants of breakfast. Why? Sebastian asked, bouncing Alexander on his knee while Amelia showed him a drawing she had made. Because I am happy, Zara said simply. Completely, sustainably happy. I have work I love, children I adore, and a husband who is my best friend. It feels almost too good to be true. It is true, though, Sebastian said, meeting her eyes across their joyful chaos. Every beautiful moment of it. And it was true. Years after that first interview, after all the revelations and challenges and triumphs, they had built something real and lasting. The fact that Sebastian was a prince had become just one thread in the rich tapestry of their relationship, important but not defining. What mattered was the love they shared, the family they had created, and the partnership that continued to inspire and sustain them both. On their 10th anniversary, they threw a massive celebration at the palace in Aldoria, inviting everyone who had been part of their journey. As Zara danced with Sebastian in the same ballroom where they had waltzed at that first state dinner, she thought about how far they had come. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "Choosing me, choosing this life instead of the traditional royal path your family wanted?" Sebastian pulled back to look at her, his expression incredulous. "Are you joking? Zara, you are the best decision I ever made. This life with you is everything I never knew I needed. I would choose you 1,000 times over in every possible universe." "I love you," Zara said, feeling the words were inadequate for the depth of what she felt. "I love you more," Sebastian said, which started a playful argument that ended with kisses and laughter and their children running over to join the dance. Later, when the party had wound down and the children were asleep in their palace rooms, Zara and Sebastian walked through the gardens where they had once promised their forever. The stars were brilliant overhead, the alpine air crisp and clean. "When I was a boy growing up here," Sebastian said, "I used to dream about escape, about finding someplace where I could be myself without all the expectations and protocol. But you taught me that I did not need to escape. I just needed to find someone who loved all of me, royal title and artistic soul, and helped me integrate those parts into one whole life." "You taught me that love can be a partnership," Zara replied. "That two people can build something together that is stronger than either could create alone. You saw potential in me I did not see in myself." "We saw it in each other," Sebastian said, echoing words from years ago. They stood together in the garden, hands intertwined, looking toward a future that stretched bright and promising before them. They would continue to create beautiful things through their work, raise their children with love and wisdom, and navigate the unique challenges of their position with grace and partnership. But most importantly, they would do it together. Their love the foundation upon which everything else was built. The girl who had been fired via email and the prince who had run from his destiny had found each other and built a fairy tale that was entirely their own. And as they walked back to the palace, their home in that moment, Zara knew that discovering Sebastian was royalty had not changed her love for him. It had only given her a deeper understanding of his courage, his strength, and the path he had taken to become the man she loved. The secret had not made her love him less or complicated what they shared. Instead, it had shown her another layer of who he was, and loving him more completely, wholly and truly was the easiest thing in the world. In the end, it did not matter that he was a prince. What mattered was that he was hers, and she was his, and they had built something beautiful that would last forever.